Welcome to On Emergence, a podcast on what it takes to be a human being. My name is Sagen. I'm your host and a fellow human being. In this podcast, we explore various topics, various lenses, various aspects of what does it take to be a human, from modern science to ancient wisdom, from spirituality to psychology. We use these various lenses to understand what does it take to be a human, what does it mean to be a human. So if you have been looking for answers on the questions that you don't even know sometimes what the questions are in the first place, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Today, I wanted to address a topic that has been popping up quite a few times whenever I share about the podcast, whenever people see the type of episodes, whenever someone listens to an episode, or kind of when they meet me. And the comment that I often get is like, oh, well, I'm not sure if it is for me because it's so spiritual, or you are so spiritual. But the thing is, I don't consider anything not spiritual. Everything has a spirit, a certain motivation, a certain feeling behind it. And it's about which perspective, which angle that you look into it. So when I looked up the etymology of the word spiritual, I found out that it's actually a belief that there is something bigger than this material, this present experience that is in front of you. And this belief can tap into various modalities. So it doesn't always have to be something to do with a divinity or God, or believe in Allah, or believe in spirits and whatever is kind of more deity-like. No, it could be a belief in your values. It could be belief that there is morals that you align yourself to, that there is something bigger than what is currently presented in front of you, something larger than your individual experience. In other words, to say that I'm not spiritual is to say that yours the experience that matters. Yours is the only experience that is valid. There's always other forces at play. There's always other people involved, circumstances that were created as a result of interacting those individualities, those individual people. So even your work can be a spiritual, in fact, it is a spiritual place because you're all working together towards something bigger than yourself. There's a pursuit of a goal, of a belief. There's alignment to certain values. And I think to call yourself a spiritual person is to acknowledge that, well, there's always something bigger at play. And making the decisions and acting from that space, remembering that there is something larger that you align yourself to. So I can give you another example. In a relationship, to acknowledge that relationship itself is a spiritual endeavor, that this is energy, the dynamic that is being created. Energy or dynamic, it's like if you are more on the, for the lack of a better word, spiritual side, to say that there's an energy. If you're a little bit more scientifically aligned, you can say that there is a dynamic, that there is an interaction, which is also a whole different discussion as like, what does it mean scientifically aligned? Actually, I took a great pride in being able to appreciate two points of view. And for some reason, they're always opposing each other. It's like modern science is one thing, but spirituality is the other. But actually, what modern science does is that it looks at spirituality, it looks at certain assumptions, and then it takes a piece of it, and then it looks at it closely, breaking it down. So it kind of moves a little bit slower. For example, wave-particle duality. That is appreciation is what forces that are at play, we don't know, but there's acknowledgement of those forces. And I'm not saying that there is a deity behind it or God. There's an appreciation of the unknown. Being spiritual is appreciating that there is always that unknown, and that unknown is so vastly bigger than our human mind is able to comprehend. There is so much that we don't know. There's so much that is out of your control when you're thinking about the situation, when you're thinking about a relationship, about a conflict, about a certain theme in your life. It's just appreciation. There's so much that you don't know. Being spiritual is holding that appreciation. And yes, I'm a fallible human being as well. I make assumptions and I fall victim, or rather I fall into the culprit of making those assumptions. But it's always remembering that there is that unknown at play that may be impacting more than I think. When it comes to spirituality, there are certain disciplines like mysticism. In the last episode in my interview with Winnie Mallard, we talked about mysticism. It's appreciation that there's otherness. There's something that we don't know, something that can only be felt, but cannot be or has not been currently tested using the tools of modern science. There are different modalities of that spirituality. For example, astrology. The science of astrology has been around for millennia, and it's based on our positioning in time and the space. And I find it fascinating. So I've been looking into astrology actually since I was very little. Since I was 6 years old, I was kind of dabbling into the books of astrology that we had around our house growing up. I find it fascinating because what it does, it measures the positioning of Earth in relation to other celestial bodies and our placement on the planet. And in that sense, I've been really finding it fascinating because if we were to translate ourselves as the cell of the human body, so let's say you are, as a human, you are a cell in the body of planet Earth or the cell of the entire solar system, and then compare it to a cell in your body, so let's say a blood cell, in comparison to your entire body. And then when your entire body is in a certain situation, in a certain shape, for example, if you're stressed, that means that there are cells in your body that will be affected by it because they are under impact, under influence of these larger factors. And where that cell is positioned is going to impact on its state. The reason why I started dabbling more into astrology, I was like, oh, that's interesting because it does actually take into account where we are, where our planet, Earth, is in comparison to other celestial bodies. Where is it located in terms of time and space in the grander scheme of things, in the context of our entire universe? And these type of thoughts, this appreciation, just remembering that we are a tiny cell located on the side of a huge rock right now spinning through space, it makes it easier for me to deal with certain day-to-day. So if I'm faced with a challenge, I remember the context. So it's not just about my life. It's not just about the people that I know, but there are also so many other factors at play that I don't know. And holding that knowledge, holding that appreciation that I am part of bigger whole, the boundaries of which I am not able to comprehend, I just hold it in my awareness, is for me being spiritual. And whether it is you making a decision and taking into account your values and knowing and appreciating that your values have been shaped as a result of your bringing, as a result of your current state of mind, as a result of the relationship you developed over the lifetime. I mean, that's a huge collection of information, and also pieces of information that you just don't know. There's so much unknown as to what has really shaped your values. That's what being spiritual. It's appreciating that wholeness, the boundaries of which you would never be able to comprehend. So when the next time you're making a decision, if you are taking into account more than your current state, more than what is currently presented in front of you, but actually you're considering other people's feelings, you're considering the context, then I challenge you to think of yourself as a spiritual being, as a spiritual human. Also, I wanted to address something when it comes to a scientific experiment, because when it comes to it, scientists do tend to cut off a piece of a specific circumstance, a situation, and test it. And they test it within a context. They can test it in a human, they can test it in a petri dish. But there is always an appreciation that that information may become obsolete once new information comes in. Once this appreciation for a wider whole is introduced in the experiment, the results of the experiment might differ. So actually, modern science is a very spiritual endeavor because it always holds that knowledge, that awareness, that there's so much that we don't know, that we are part of the bigger whole, which is actually modern science has proven us. We are a planet Earth, part of the solar system, part of the Milky Way, all of that we are pieces of something so much larger than we are. So it's an invitation for you to think about it next time that you're making a decision. If you are taking into account other people's needs, your values, morals, context, the situation, time, and space, and acknowledging the fact that this is not permanent, that circumstances will change as they always do, then you are a spiritual being. You are a spiritual person. And in a way, you can rest in the fact that there's so much that you can control. There's so much that is outside your comprehension. And there's still so much for you to discover. So I'm really curious to hear about your thoughts on spirituality, especially spirituality in the context of modern science, or if this topic feels alien to you, like what is spiritual? I'm not spiritual. I'm not very spiritual. Let me know in comments. I would love to start a conversation about that, because spirituality doesn't need to involve going to church or temple. Spirituality could be just holding the appreciation of the beautiful unknown that we all are. I hope to see you next week. And once again, I'm Laura Sagen, your host of On Emergence, a podcast on what it takes to be a human being.